And for sure, I think we have time. We have time, and we need to really believe in big things. We need to believe that we can win, that we can win not only a game, we can win the World Cup.
Hello, Sunshine. I'm Alexi, Lalas, and welcome to the State of the Union podcast, where we look at the beautiful game on and off the field through the lens of red, white, and blue-colored glasses. This show, we'll be talking Pochettino coming to America. Yeah, baby. The Euro conundrum, Messi's back, Galaxy traffic, uniting American soccer, the terror, Mexico bound, the strange case of Carlos Vela, and so much more. But first, joining me, as always, my friend, my colleague, my guiding light, David Mosse, a soccer savant and a Fox soccer researcher and writer extraordinaire. Mosse, how you doing on this Monday, September 16th in the year 2024?
I'm doing well. How does my makeup look?
You look good, buddy. I mean, you always look good. I mean, you are, even in your natural state, you look vibrant, you look energetic. So I don't see any difference.
The reason I ask is I was told that in the comments section of our spaces we did last week, some guy was convinced I was wearing eyeliner.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, we do not normally wear makeup. Sometimes when I'm doing stuff elsewhere, I will have makeup on. We like to give you the natural, raw version of both of us here, despite all the glitz and the glamour and the lighting and the cameras and stuff like that. But I don't know, maybe we'll work up to makeup. I mean, I don't know how we're going to improve on this, my friend. I mean, this mug over here, this would make many people weep in joy out there. So I think you're fine. Have you watched anything?
Well, this past weekend, my buddy Dan and I drove down to San Diego to visit our friends David and Julie and their 10-month-old daughter, Leia. Great trip. San Diego's beautiful. We ate at the famous Phil's Barbecue, which lived up to the hype. But there was a curious moment on Saturday. David asked Dan and I if we wanted to go to the beach. We said, sure. He took us to a beach, and it was only upon arriving that he informed us that it was a clothing optional beach.
Shut up.
And to add insult to injury, the ratio was like 10-1 guys. So I was surrounded by penises. It was a very disturbing afternoon.
Oh, wait. So what kind of friend just drops this on you? This is ridiculous.
I guess it was a bit of a practical joke, and it worked.
Oh, my goodness. All right. Well, talk about needing makeup. All right. Well, I don't even know if I have anything to compete with that. But did you watch anything or other than penises or?
Another episode of Industry last night, episode 6, just 2 left this season. Tonight I've got episode 2 of season 4 of My Brilliant Friend. I know your wife will be tuning in.
We were just talking about it last night. Yep.
Yes.
She's very excited about that.
The Emmys, by the way, took place last night. Shogun was the big winner. They won a record. I think it was like 18 different Emmys, and I love that show, so I think it was well-deserved.
I only have one thing, The Terror over there on Netflix. It just dropped on Netflix, but I think it's an AMC thing that happened a couple of years ago. And it was basically in the response to the Walking Dead type of genre, you know, the zombies and that kind of stuff. It is about, but it's based off of a true story. The ships, the Terror and the Erebus, that were part of the Franklin expedition, the Franklin Lost expedition back in 1845, that was sent out to find and discover the Northwest Passage to the Pacific. And this is, I think it's a 10-episode thing called The Terror, and it goes through this, and it obviously takes incredible license because I'm not giving anything away, but the entire expedition was lost in terms of over 100 men. How that ultimately happened, they know the ships got stuck in the ice, but ultimately how they died is up for debate, including cannibalism, and it gets into a weird type of thing where they they mix in. I get what they were trying to do with the Walking Dead type of thing, but it takes it completely out. I think they should have just played it straight, even though I guess they didn't know ultimately what happened, so they were taking some license out there. It was still entertaining. It was, I think, too long, and like I said, I think trying to incorporate a genre into something that didn't need it. It's already a fascinating type of true and real life type of situation that they could have told and made it that much more interesting. Anyway, should we light this candle, my friend?
Let's do it.
Where shall we start?
Friday was a big day for U.S. soccer. Mauricio Pochettino was introduced as the new U.S. men's coach at a press conference in Midtown Manhattan. He earned rave reviews, was very well received, hit all the right notes. I have thoughts, but I'll let you go first. What did you make of it?
So I was impressed and I guess cautiously optimistic after the Pochettino press conference. He said all the right things, and I think said them all in the right way, in that he was personable, affable. I thought he came across as comfortable. I thought he came across as controlled. And I thought he came across as incredibly likable as the new head man for this men's national team. The actual content and the substance of what he talked about, I think you could have written it ahead of time. But that it's coming from Mauricio Pochettino, I think, is what has made it powerful. In that Mosse, and we started the show off with the clip where he talked about, for example, this team believing, this team needing to believe, and ultimately believing so much that they believe that they can win a World Cup. Now, this is not necessarily something new that has been said, but the way that it was received is very different. Mosse, you know you're a big music fan. You can write the best song in the world. But just because you're a performer doesn't mean that it's going to translate when you go out and perform it. And sometimes great songs need great messengers. And so the message is important. But in this case, I think the messenger is as important, if not more important. So when he does say things that even though we've heard before, it has more gravitas because of who it is coming from. You know, I mean, we've talked about believing that we can win a World Cup and saying that. And oftentimes when I say it or other people say it out there or other coaches say it out there, it's met with, oh, you're gaslighting, or you are, shilling, or you are preying off of an uneducated American soccer public out there by saying that, and it's delusional for you to say that. This, when Mauricio Pochettino says it, was met with the absolute opposite reaction. And I'm happy about that. I'm happy that he is, in saying something like this, obviously setting the bar very high, but also making it inspirational. And I think that is very, very important. Again, less than 2 years until 2026. Believing that you can do things that haven't been done before, believing that you can do things that people say you can't do is important. Ultimately, whether it happens is up to him. I will say this when it comes to the believe and believe and the believe. Ricken, I mean, I understand the Ted Lasso effect, but Ted Lasso has screwed it up for everybody because you can't just say believe and then automatically makes it happen. So he's got a lot of work to do in order to live up to the things that he talked about. But out of the chute, as I said, incredibly positive, I think incredibly impactful, and I don't think it could have gone better for him.
I don't have an issue with Pochettino on day one talking about winning the World Cup. He read the room. It's what people like you wanted to hear. Nobody wants Pochettino to walk in there on day one and temper expectations. But we are talking about a national team that over the last 9 World Cups has one knockout stage win against Mexico in 2002. A national team that has one player, Christian Pulisic, who is a bang-on starter for a big club in a top 5 European league. And a national team that, let's be honest, we've talked about this before. If we were to rank every national team in the world across Europe, South America, et cetera, the U.S. clocks in somewhere around 15th. So I'd be curious to know Does he really believe that, or is he just saying it for PR purposes? And it is worth noting, Jeff Carlisle wrote an excellent piece chronicling the U.S.'s coaching search and how they ended up with Pochettino. And he said in the piece that prospective candidates were told the goal for 26 is to reach at least the quarterfinals, and anything beyond that is gravy. So that might be where everybody's head's at more realistically, but Pochettino felt like on day one, why not set a high goal for yourself and talk about winning the World Cup?
Yeah, and again, this message coming from this messenger, I think, was appropriate to your point in the circumstance in that press conference, and the timing of it is important. I did, as I heard him talk, at times I scratched my head. I was like, yeah, the reason why I was impacted and I reacted in the way that I did was because, yeah, I've said this kind of stuff before and taken plenty of shots over the years when I do say something like that, whether it's, yes, the U.S. should believe that they should win the World Cup. And if you're going to go to a World Cup, what's the point of going unless you believe that you are going to win? Is it easy? No. Is it probable? Not necessarily. And certainly given the past that you just talked about. And then when he started talking about arrogance, and we've talked about the beautiful arrogance that I want to see from an American team. So he was feeding into that Americanism that I have, and that American exceptionalism that we have. But because it was coming from this messenger, I think it hit in a way that maybe others saying the exact same thing wouldn't.
Two other things he said that I thought were interesting. He is going to be eventually based in Atlanta. He said he'll spend a lot of time in Europe scouting players, but he is going to move to the U.S., so that sort of puts to bed that whole issue. Also, he dismissed lack of time as an issue, which was so refreshing to me because we hear so often national team coaches use that as an excuse. Pochettino said, no, if you have the right coach and the right players, things can click instantaneously, and so he's not worried at all about the lack of time. I actually liked that he said that.
What's he going to say? Oh, boy, I don't have a whole lot of time. I lost another window here. So he's saying all the right things, and he's saying things that most other coaches would say. Have we ever heard a coach get up there and say, you know what? I want to bunker in. I want to concede the ball as much as possible. And then when we do get the ball, I want to make as few passes and look as unappetizing as possible. Nobody says that. Everybody wants to play attacking. Everybody wants to put the other team under pressure. So ultimately, the proof is in the pudding, and the devil is in the details. When we ultimately see what this team looks like when they get on the field.
A few other notes from that Jeff Carlisle piece, which everybody should read, by the way, was excellent. He said that they started out with a list of 100 coaches, and they divided them into 3 categories. The ones they thought they could definitely get, the ones that were a bit of a reach, and the ones that were a super reach. And Pochettino was actually in the super reach category. So it's quite the coup for U.S. soccer to land the guy who at the beginning of the process they thought was going to be a super reach. Klopp, the article says, that was the dream choice.
Right.
They went for him first, and he turned them down. But it sounds like Pochettino was right there, a level below Klopp. And so they got to be doing cartwheels at U.S. Soccer that they were able to land a coach.
And
like
rumored $6 million
I was going to say that. So
price tag, too.
So he's taking quite the pay cut from what he's used to making at club level. It's around $6 million per year. However, even then, U.S. Soccer had to get creative and rely on some donors. Sounds like this Kenneth Griffin, who got a shout out in the press release, might be footing a lot of the bill here. It is more than Emma Hayes makes, but Emma evidently has no issue with that. Her and Pochettino are friends from their time together at Chelsea, so she's all for this, is okay with it. So that puts that issue to rest as far as the equal pay stuff. And then very interesting thing Jeff mentioned in the piece is that it's a 2-year contract, but both sides are very open to the possibility of signing on for another cycle. So this might not be such a short-term solution as we initially thought.
Well, if it's long-term, I think it would be relative to him being successful. So I hope it ends up being long-term because of the short-term success that we have. Also, are you suggesting that Emma is okay with it simply because she likes him and has a relationship with him? I mean, she should be okay with it ultimately because he's a quality coach, whether she knows him or not, right?
Yeah, but I think it helps that they get along really well. It sounds like Emma Hayes might have even played a part in convincing Pochettino.
And that's great. And use everything at your disposal. But if your friend is making that amount of money and you don't think that that's fair, then that should supersede any type of friendship that you have. Shout out he got from plenty of people out there that are looking at this. And this did make international news. his signing and the announcement. Pep Guardiola even talked about it in his comments. I think he wished him well. I think he looks at him as a peer, and at times maybe a worthy adversary when it comes to what Pep does. But they're also in listening to Pep talk about it, there also seemed to be kind of not a confusion, but a reticence to go full bore on it, in that he's kind of gone and over there doing that thing. And it's a very different type of situation. Although Pep, as a lot of these coaches have said, they talk about America in a dreamlike type of way, as that is something that ultimately does interest him. Now, some of them are doing it because it's prudent business-wise, just to kind of keep that market open. And some, I do think, in this case, when it comes to Pep or anybody else, they do see that as a possibility in the future.
Also, I found it interesting. We focus so much on his ability to speak English, but it sounds like his ability to speak Spanish, obviously he's Argentinian, was a factor too, because it could help him recruit dual nationals between the U.S. and Mexico. So it was interesting that was cited as a factor as well in all the articles.
Yeah, I'm as I said, I am cautiously optimistic here. Now we get down to it, in that we have windows coming up, and we will see the team actually on the field. And he has made that wide open door policy, which is good. And I think it's just smart. And what coach would come in and say, no, this is the only players and nobody else has a chance? Obviously, you're going to publicly say that everybody has a chance, and who knows, maybe they are going to scour going forward.
His first two matches will come in the October window against Panama and Austin, and against Mexico and Guadalajara. That should be a fun one now with Pochettino on the bench.
Yes, that is that is going to be interesting. And we will look at and see how the team collectively plays, and are there changes in the way that they go out playing, either formationally or tactically in the way they do it. We will look at, are they bringing in players that either we haven't seen in the past, or players that have kind of been written off in the past, or younger players that we have recognized but haven't really been part of this team, or the players that are there, is he able to get them individually to play better than we have seen so far, and certainly better than this last window, where, again, it was just a pathetic and kind of apathetic type of performance from this team. Anything else on Pochettino? Obviously, we'll talk about him a lot going forward, and he is going to be one of the main stars as we lead into this next less than 2 years leading up to 2026. But all in all, I think, I don't want to speak for everybody, I remain happy, and I am excited.
I think we can leave it there for today, but in terms of some of the players he'll be coaching, we begin our weekend review at the San Siro, where AC Milan hammered Venezia 4-0. 3 Americans involved. Pulisic started for AC Milan. Musah came on as a sub, and Gianluca Busio started for Venezia. Pulisic was the story, assisted Fofana, and then converted a penalty, a goal and an assist. He has 2 goals and 2 assists in 4 Serie A games. He's off to a wonderful start this season.
Yes, and over the years we've talked about Christian Pulisic in the context of injuries. We've talked about him in change of clubs, lots of change of managers, and how that has affected him. Again, his foray into Italy could not have gone better, and continues to seemingly just get better and better and better. And again, knock on wood, he stays healthy. But this is fun to see, as Christian Pulisic scores goals, plays consistently, and is a consistent starter.
Sean Sullivan made a good point to us before we started taping. Pulisic's set-piece deliveries for the U.S. national team have been wanting, and yet here he gets an assist on a corner for AC Milan. So you wonder if what he does at club level can translate to the national team in that regard.
I wonder if AC Milan has a set-piece coach. Maybe it's too much information bombarding Christian Pulisic. But I think Christian Pulisic, or any player, will tell you that it's just a very different type of environment. Who you're putting the ball to, where you're putting the ball, or what you're being asked to do when he's with AC Milan as opposed to the U.S. men's national team. But yes, we would like some of that AC Milan magic when it comes to set pieces to translate to the U.S. national team.
And we should note the Champions League proper begins this week. Remember, it's now the Swiss model, 36 clubs all in one table, and AC Milan involved in one of the marquee matchups. They will host Liverpool in a rematch of the 2005 and 2007 UCL final. So a nice test for Pulisic, Musah, and company.
Oh, that is scrumptious. And I know you're going to talk about Liverpool in a second, so they're coming off of not a great result. So we'll see if they can roll down there in Italy.
Juventus 0-0 away to Empoli. The good news, Weah returned from injury, came on as a sub. The bad news, Weston McKennie, an unused sub. He has played only 23 minutes in 4 Serie A games. And keep in mind, he was left out of this last U.S. squad, presumably so he could improve his club situation, but it didn't quite work out that way.
I think that's what they call languishing now from a McKennie perspective. And yes, it's a surprise given the role that he has played over the last couple of years and how he came back and his flexibility. But it's also not a surprise given some of the off-field contractual stuff and the drama that happened right now. And while Weston McKennie has certainly been of value in the way that he has played for Juventus, I don't think that he ever got necessarily to the level of a Christian Pulisic in terms of importance on the field. And at times, to be fair to Weston McKennie, he was probably taken for granted. I just worry that this is not going to get any better, despite his ability to consistently prove us wrong and prove coaches wrong and work his way back into a lineup. Something about this feels much more dire and permanent for him. So it's not good for him. It's obviously not good for the U.S. men's national team.
In the Champions League, Juventus will host PSV, which could be an American orgy. Speaking of PSV, they claimed a 2-0 home win in the Eredivisie against, I'm going to call them NEC. Kyla put their actual full name in the rundown, the team that PSV played, but I think I'm okay referring to them as just NEC and abbreviating it. Malik Tillman started. Pepi came on as a sub in the second half. So we'll see now. Juve versus PSV. Weah, McKennie, Tillman, and Pepi all involved. Dest, as we know, still injured. But of those 4 Americans, we'll see how many start, how many play.
So you would not be caught dead calling it Nijmegen.
Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, right?
Boy, that's impressive that you just rattled that off.
Have you never heard of like Nijmegen?
No.
You've never heard of the city of Nijmegen? Oh, okay. All right. I think that's how you pronounce it. That's how I've always pronounced it.
All right.
All right, cool. All right, good.
No, well done, well done.
Yeah,
so Juve, PSV, are you excited for that one? All the Americans potentially involved?
Yeah, I'm excited. And again, we're going to talk a little later in the pod about the phenomenon of players in Europe, either going to Europe or already in Europe, and playing or not playing, and how that relates to the U.S. men's national team. But Tillman continues to be a starter and continues to play. And when it comes to Pepi, again, it's better than Weston McKennie, but it's still, if this is as good as it gets, is that good enough relative to the national team?
It was a quiet weekend in the championship. None of Haji Wright, Josh Sargent, and Brendan Aronson did anything, but we bring up Brendan Aronson to note that Leeds fans voted him the club's player of the month for the month of August. Keep in mind, he's somebody that they tried to get rid of this past summer, ended up sticking around. So this is quite the turnaround for him. His career seems to be back on track, and it helped him get back on the national team as well.
Well, it's never a question when it comes to Brendan Aronson as whether he's going to work. That is always part of his game. And if you do nothing else, you give yourself a chance when you work, and you work harder than anybody else around. And he obviously has done that. The question always was, is that work enough? Is he proficient enough from a technical perspective to make an impact? I think he has found his place. I also think he has found his level where he really excels. And, that he was named Leeds August Player of the Month, I think says a lot about his character and about his mentality and obviously about his work ethic, but also about finding, even with some twists and turns and even with, I guess, a return, finding where he ultimately is at his best.
I agree. He started for Leeds this past weekend in their 1-0 home defeat to Burnley. He's getting regular playing time, and we'll see if he can continue producing for them. We stay in England, but move up a level to the Premier League. We'll leave City for last because there's a lot going on with them. But their two main challengers experienced contrasting fortunes this past weekend. Liverpool suffered a shock 1-0 home defeat to Nottingham Forest. Callum Hudson-Odoi with the only goal. For Forest, it's their first win at Anfield since 1969, which, to put that in perspective, you weren't even born yet.
Yeah, that's true. That's a hell of a run of futility. Did you watch the goal, the Nottingham goal?
I did, yeah.
And every once in a while we can kind of geek out a little bit from a soccer perspective here. If you watch it, the ball gets played out to the left-hand side, and there are different ways of defending, especially when you are a right back and you're in a back four, or a back three for that matter. And the age-old question of, do you show somebody inside or you show somebody outside? And they're just very, very different ways of thinking about the game. And I couldn't help thinking in that moment when he went inside, it remains to be seen, I guess different people can look at it differently as to whether he was shown inside or not. But I was always of the opinion I would much rather deal with a cross, that I would much rather deal with the ball coming in from the outside than somebody coming in and, as we saw right there with Hudson-Odoi, shooting the ball and having the opportunity, either near post or far post, to do it depending on the angle, or slipping the ball behind. So again, it's a philosophy, and different teams have different things. I remember when I went to Arsenal years and years ago on a tryout type of situation, they explained to me that they, as a defensive unit, preferred to push people inside because that was where the players are. That was where the fortification was. And it was a very different way of playing and a different way of a player approaching an attacker. And, there's always that balance of, well, do you shade it too much and therefore you give somebody who's really, really good on the outside the speed to get around you? Or in this case, do you force them inside and they find a way from a shooting perspective? And oftentimes now, where you have right-footed players playing on the left and left-footed players playing on the right, the ability on their much stronger foot, are you giving them the opportunity to then curl those balls around that we've seen so many times? Anyway, that was what I was thinking in that. Ultimately, from a results perspective, really, really interesting result and a great result in terms of historical perspective.
What year was that Arsenal trial?
That would have been like November, December of 1992-ish. Yes.
So George Graham?
Yep. George Graham and Ian Wright and Paul Ince. And
Lee Dixon, Tony
Lee
Adams.
Dixon, all, yeah. Yep.
Wow.
Not
When
Paul
you
Ince, not Paul Ince. Merson, sorry.
When you worked with Ian Wright
Yes.
in the 2018 World Cup, did he remember that trial at all?
Yeah. They took me to him and Tony Adams, and Paul Merson once took me to eat potato skins. They were infatuated with like this Chi-Chi's Bennigan's place that existed. They took me, I'll never forget, sitting at a bar and drinking and eating with them. And they were so excited about tater skins coming. So,
wow, fascinating. Well, speaking of Arsenal, they claimed the big win this past weekend, 1-0 away to Tottenham in the North London derby. And a defender, Brazilian Gabriel, got the winner, heading in a corner. So Arsenal get a nice win there. Shall we get to Manchester City?
Yeah, let's do it. A good win from Arsenal. And given what Manchester City is doing right now, you want someone to keep up. And so thankfully, Arsenal is trying to do that. Liverpool, maybe not so much ultimately, but.
Yeah, let's do on-the-field stuff first with City. They continue their perfect start to the campaign, 2-1 home victory over Brentford. They actually conceded in the opening minute, but then Erling Haaland scored twice. And even by his standards, this is just a bonkers start to the campaign. He has 9 goals in 4 Premier League games, including 2 hat-tricks. He's up to 99 goals and 103 Manchester City appearances. And City are involved in the best Champions League game of this week. They host Inter Milan in a rematch of the 23 final, so we'll see if Haaland can get goal number 100 in that one. And, with all this talk about how crowded the calendar is and how tired players are, a lot of people are attributing this great start to Norway actually missing the Euros and Haaland getting an entire summer off. Do you think there's something to that?
I mean, I think he'd be doing it no matter what. That he's rested physically and mentally. Does that help? Yeah. I was actually more impressed with the diversity of goals that he scored. If you were watching the show, you just saw that second one, which was as route one as you can possibly get, from the goalkeeper right down the middle of the field. And Haaland's very, very good at using his frame and just on the borderline of possibly pushing and interfering, and he gets the ball and it just goes right in. But for a Pep Guardiola coach team, it's almost like that is that is the poison, if you will. What they've tried to avoid over the years. The fact that he is willing to do that, I think it says a lot about the evolution of Pep, but also about his recognition that I have this guy up top, and the players on the field obviously understand that you put it up there and good things happen.
And we should note, he also got the winner for Norway against Austria in the Nations League in this last window, so he's also in great form for his national team as well. Now, the bad for City is that today, Monday, September 16 was the start of this long-awaited trial on their 115 financial fair play charges. The English media is treating this like the trial of the century. It's probably going to last several months, so we may not get a decision until sometime early next year. But this is a day that people like our boss, Zach Kenworthy, who's a Liverpool superfan, have waited a long time for. City's reckoning is finally here.
Okay, but what do we really think that reckoning is ultimately going to be? I mean,
Yeah.
do you think they're going to get dinged?
I still think when push comes to shove, they have great lawyers. They're going to find a way around this. However, it might not be the harshest penalties. They might not get relegated. But if they get found guilty on some of the charges and get some sort of points penalty, in your view, does that taint all their accomplishments in recent years? That just being found guilty of something?
I guess. I mean, you can't be a little pregnant, right? I mean, if they cheated, they cheated. And so if they find that it happened in years past, then it's ill-gotten gains, right? And so don't you have to kind of claw back whatever happened? But it also, if they then assess them a penalty, a points penalty or something like that, and it ends up costing them the title this year, then it puts an asterisk again, whoever wins it, and we're back to, the COVID asterisk types of thing, and it's not really ultimately earned, if you will. So it's a big old mess. But I'm like you. I think they do have enough money, and therefore they have the best lawyers out there, and they will find a way around all of these things. Even though I think there's going to be massive pressure, whether it's from Zach Kenworthy or anybody else out there, to do something. And everybody kind of loves to see, the rich and the elites and the super clubs, if you will, get their comeuppance, especially in a world like the EPL where they're the haves and the have-nots. And so who knows? Maybe they'll split the baby and do something that kind of satisfies both sides. But who knows?
We transition to La Liga. Real Madrid claimed a 2-0 away win over Sociedad. Vinicius and Mbappe both converted penalties in the second half. They're alternating taking penalties this season. For Mbappe, his fourth goal already in all competitions, so he's doing just fine. But Real Madrid still not playing that well as a team. This was very much a smash and grab. Sociedad hit the post 3 times. It's interesting. Barcelona are playing much better than Real Madrid at the start of the season. They are flying under Hansi Flick. 5 wins out of 5. The latest victory, 4-1 away to Girona. Lamine Yamal scored twice. He keeps getting better and better. At 17 years of age, I already think he's a top 10 player in the world.
Really? You're going to put him in there? I mean, what I love about it is that you kind of construct this player, and let's be honest, you promote and market him. And this summer, I mean, look, he was as important as anybody in terms of our marketing as to why you should tune in, because of his skill, but also because of his age. And yet he continues to deliver. And we talk so much about the mental capacity and the mental fortitude that is necessary at the highest level. And you have a young player right now, a teenager right now, who again has been fostered from a young age, not just to be what you're saying, one of the great players of the game, but also to accept all the other crazy stuff that comes with it off the field. And yes, he's protected. And yes, he is insulated, as a lot of these big players are, especially when they're coming up from a young age. But still, to have that expectation and to still on a continual basis deliver it, I think it says a lot about how he is, just, in terms of his talent. But I also it says a lot about how he has been raised as a soccer player and the tools and the skills he has been given to deal with it and to recognize that, yeah, I have these expectations, but it's given to me. These expectations are because people believe I am so good, and yet time and time again he lives up to it. In many cases, is surpassing it.
Olmo and Pedri got the other goals. Olmo did pick up an injury. Sounds like it could be out a few weeks, so that would be a big loss for them. Barcelona begin their Champions League campaign away to Monaco. Real Madrid, who are obviously the holders, are home to Stuttgart. Next up, Hansi Flick's former club, Bayern Munich. They're off to a perfect start in the Bundesliga under Vincent Kompany. 3 wins out of 3. The latest victory, 6-1 away to Holstein Kiel. Harry Kane with a hat-trick, capping off what was an amazing week for him because last Tuesday at Wembley, he earned his 100th cap for England against Finland and scored 2 beautiful goals in that game, goals number 67 and 68 of his England career. And then he gets a hat trick for Bayern. In doing so, he became the fastest player to reach 50 goal contributions in the Bundesliga, breaking a record that Erling Haaland had set a few years back with Dortmund. So we talked about how well Erling Haaland's doing. Harry Kane, not too far behind.
Yeah, I mean, part of me cares because he was denied the opportunity that, let's be honest, for the last decade, anybody going to Bayern Munich was assured, and that was winning the Bundesliga. And so that they're off to a hot start and that he is off to a hot start. And it should be said that it was not on him last year. I mean, he brought it last year for Bayern Munich, and he continues to bring it this year. So when all is said and done, maybe everything will be back right relative to Bayern Munich, and he will have his title. But we're ultimately going to judge Bayern Munich, as we often do when it comes to Champions League. Leverkusen down in 5th place now. So is the bloom off? Is it just...
It's early. They've won 2 of their 3 games. I don't think it's anything to get too worked up over. To bring this back full circle, though, remember, we talked about this recently. Harry Kane became Harry Kane under Mauricio Pochettino. That is a nice feather in Pochettino's cap that he helped turn Kane into this prolific goal scorer, and the rest is history. You know who's also good at finding the back of the net?
Who's that?
Lionel Messi. As we transition to Major League Soccer, this past weekend, Messi made his long-awaited return as Inter Miami hosted Philadelphia. It was Messi's first match since the Copa America final when he picked up that ankle injury. Inter Miami conceded in the first couple of minutes, but then came storming back. Messi scored twice in quick succession, and then he assisted Luis Suarez later on. So 2 goals and 1 assist. Inter Miami take it 3-1.
So first off, whether you're a Messi fan or whether you're an Inter Miami fan or an MLS for that matter, I think you have to be happy, given his injury, that he is back on the field and doing what he has done for so many years. The other part is, we are well into the Messi era when it comes to Major League Soccer. And so whether it's, in this case, a Jim Curtin with Philadelphia or anybody else, they have seen how Messi plays and how Inter Miami plays with Messi. And so the book is out in terms of what you can do and what you can't do. And we have seen different ways of going about it. We've seen people that have just said, I'm just going to follow this guy everywhere he goes. That doesn't matter. And they say, all right, well, we're not going to do that, and we're going to do it by committee. That doesn't work. And you look at the goals that he scored, and when you're watching it, it seems simple. Now, some of Messi's goals don't seem simple, and you're just oohing and ahhing. But when you're watching him score, this past weekend, it's just simple, and it's a fait accompli oftentimes. And yes, he's got a guy like Luis Suarez that understands him, and in other players that are making him look good. But I think, and we've heard coaches in MLS say this now, is that you can't stop him. All right, you can try to slow him down, and at best, that is what you are going to do. And yet, I'm sure that there are plenty of coaches, whether they're head coaches or staffs out there, that are huddled around this screen and saying, yeah, we got the answer. We have the antidote. And then they come to the realization very, very quickly when the game starts that it doesn't matter what information you give. It doesn't matter whether you have 1 player on or 2 players on him, or you pull back, or you let them have the ball, or you high press him or anything like that. He will find his moments, and he will make you pay. And so I'm excited to see that he's healthy again, which is good, and knock on wood, because no matter what, he is good for the game when he is on the field. And the rich get richer when it comes to Inter Miami. But playoffs are coming, my friend.
There was a neat moment after. Did you see Messi take a picture with 14-year-old Kevin Sullivan?
That's right, yes. I mean, well, if anybody knows about being kind of a wunderkid and, the possibilities, let's hope that Mr. Sullivan ends up being half the player that Messi is, or a quarter of the player Messi is.
As we discussed, he's well on his way to supplanting Sean Sullivan as the most famous Sullivan in the world. Incidentally, the teams that are second and third in the East, Cincinnati and Columbus, played to a scoreless draw in the Hell is Real Derby. The top two teams in the West squared off in Carson in another edition of El Tráfico. It was a tale of two halves. LAFC got off to a great start. Jumped out to a 2-0 lead in the first 15 minutes. Goals by Bogus and Buanga. Could have been up more. Giroud hit the post, but they looked to be in good shape at the half. And then the Galaxy came storming back in the second half. Joveljic 2-1, Cerillo 2-2, Joveljic again 3-2, and Ricky Puig 4-2. What a comeback win for the Galaxy.
All right, don't let anybody tell you that El Tráfico isn't the greatest rivalry in Major League Soccer. And yes, sometimes rivalries don't live up to billing. This one did and more. And certainly if you look at, the Hell is Real. I mean, Hell is really boring ultimately with that. But this was anything but when it comes to what happened in Los Angeles. When you look at LAFC and you look at the way that they play, I mean, they will make you pay. They don't necessarily want the ball, but they will make you pay. And when they are in that transition and they have that type of space, which is ultimately how they went ahead. But credit to Greg Vanney and this crew that came back with 4 unanswered, and they do it. They play in a very different way. And Ricky Puig, love watching Ricky Puig and what he has done over the last couple of years. But now he has players to work with. And so this was, as we said, this was an electric El Tráfico. And everything that was billed to be on the field, and lots of goals and lots of back and forth and lots of excitement. Ultimately, the home team won, but it was not looking good for the LA Galaxy. And I do think that in the compare and contrast between these two teams, the LA Galaxy, at least in 2024, the LAFC in 2024 is turning out to be kind of one-dimensional. Now, that one dimension can get them plenty of wins and can scare the bejesus out of other teams. And the Galaxy, on the other hand, is kind of multifaceted in what they can do. And again, when those two meet, as they did today, ultimately it was like the tortoise and the hare type of situation. And that's not always the case. But congratulations to the LA Galaxy. Don't worry, LAFC is going to be just fine. And as a matter of fact, I think we got some LAFC news.
Well, but first off, I just want to note the Galaxy are now above the games in hand margin. LAFC have played 2 fewer games than them. So until recently, I was reluctant to tout the fact that the Galaxy were in first place in the West, because if LAFC had won their games in hand, they would have overtaken them. Right. But that's no longer the case. It's a 7-point gap. Even if LAFC win their 2 games in hand, they would still be behind them. But yeah, LAFC making some interesting off-field news. They have signed Carlos Vela as a free agent. He is back. Remember, out of contract at the end of last season, did not re-sign. He was a free agent all these months. Nobody picked him up. And here he is. He's back. Obviously, the transfer window is already closed, but because he's a free agent, they were able to pick him up on the very last day. September 13th was the roster freeze day. They were able to sign him. If he's half as good as he was before, you add him to Buanga and Giroud, all of a sudden that could be a scary attack. But who knows what kind of shape Carlos Vela is in.
Yeah, I mean, the curious case of Carlos Vela. And relative to the story that you're telling right now and this signing, but also, I mean, he has always been kind of unique and very eccentric in the decisions that he has made. What is beyond debate, though, is his ability. Now, the reason why they were able to sign him is because he hasn't been playing soccer, all right? Since last year, he's basically, from a contractual standpoint, taken the year off. I hope that he can still play. It's going to be interesting to see him be integrated into this team. And while I just was talking about LAFC being kind of one-dimensional right now, this does bring something different into the LAFC. And for Steve Cherundolo, it's a nice little thing to have. That it took this long, I mean, sure, there's a fascinating story behind the scenes as to what was going on. And part of it, I'm sure, is Carlos Vela is just kind of Carlos Vela going to Carlos Vela. That's what he does. But ultimately, I'm excited to see what LAFC looks like with a 2024 version after basically taking a year off in their midst. So, and he's a legend. He basically established this team that came out of the chute and was so good. And to your point, if he is able to, tap into some of that magic, that's a nice little player to have. I guess coming off the bench, certainly to begin with, but who knows? Maybe he works his way in and he provides them that different dimension going forward at the most important time as they get ready for the playoffs.
That is it.
All right. We will take a quick break. And when we come back, it's time for Ask Alexi. Don't go anywhere. Okay, welcome back. It's time for Ask Alexi, that part of the show where you send in your comments, questions, and concerns. And you can do it in a couple different ways. One, over there on the social media platforms. Keep in mind that our handle is SOTU with Alexi, and use that hashtag Ask Alexi. Or you can call into our State of the Union podcast hotline, which is 657-549-2297. That is 657-549-2297. Mosse, what do the folks want to know this show?
First up, we have a voicemail. Let's take a listen.
Hi, guys. This is Alex from Chicago. Just giving you a call to see what your opinion is on players that are consistently getting injured throughout the season. Repeat offenders such as Mason Mount for Man United, Gio Reyna for the men's national team, and Borussia Dortmund. Is it coming down to club negligence, trying to rush these players back too quickly from injury, or do you think it's down to the players not taking care of their bodies anymore, or not to a certain standard? Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Alex from Chicago. So, I've said this before, but I think it bears repeating. I think that staying healthy is a skill. Now, some players out there are born with it, and some players out there have to work on it. We've talked about Christian Pulisic. And the fact that, when he was younger and in the early part of his very young teenage career, there were moments where he was hurt. And some of that is kind of to be expected, especially as we're dealing with younger and younger players, because, their bodies are literally changing from sometimes month to month and certainly from year to year. And you look very, very different as a young man, a teenager, than your body does when you get into your 20s. And sometimes that wreaks havoc on the system, for those that are out there. By the way, whether you're a man or a woman, you recognize that your body significantly changes, and that can alter the way that you run, and that can alter a million different things. And so you have to deal with that. The other thing is you have to understand and know your body. And, that's why I say I think it is a skill. And when you are looking at players that are able to year in and year out, and I know we're just coming off of a Messi injury, but the reality is when you look at how many games he has played and how long he has played and how few real serious injuries, and again, I'm knocking on wood, he has had, that's an incredible tribute to how well he knows his body, how he uses his body, and the skill that's, he was probably born with some of it and certainly developed some of it over time to understand how far to push his body going forward. You can't have it both ways, because when I think about the modern game and the advances when it comes to, the medical resources that players have and the monitoring of the body, and then, you couple it with the lamenting out there of the amount of games that people have to play. Okay, fine. And the travel. All right. But the travel in many cases, and certainly when we're talking about a lot of these big time players, it's in the lap of luxury. And so I just think it depends player to player. And again, we've talked over the last couple of weeks about trying not to grumpy old man things and saying, oh, it was back then. There was an element of just get on with it and suck it up, buttercup, going forward. I'm not saying that is necessarily the right thing to do, and you really have to be careful. But at a young age, as you are teaching players, I do think that there has to be a point and moments where you have them push through and you make them push through from a physical perspective. Because I think sometimes athletes don't realize how much they actually can do and how much their body can withstand. And if you're constantly coddling, or if you're constantly saying, are you 100%? Well, the last time that I was 100%, Mosse, I was 10 years old or 9 years old. You're never 100%. There's always going to be something. But, the difference between being hurt and, actually being injured, those can be two different things. I know that's a long way of saying is that there's a lot of different factors that come into play. And some players, like I said, either grow into it or grow out of it relative to them being hurt. Some players never recover from early injuries that they have and they are stunted. And some players, it's almost as if they walk on water and nothing ultimately from a physical perspective affects them. They are few and far between, but I do think ultimately that it is a skill. And it's something to be assessed when you are, looking to have a transfer or bring in a player. You look at their injury history because it does you no good if they're just up and down and in this squad and out of the squad and in the squad and out of the squad. Any coach will tell you that I don't need you to be Messi. I just need you to be consistent so that I can count on you week in and week out.
Next order of business, Stu Holden is a frequent guest on this pod, but you also interact with him in your free time, and he recently sent you a message and asked for you to address it on the air during an Ask Alexi segment. The message was as follows. This is, again, Stu Holden sending you this. Mm-hmm. Has the trend of players going to Europe just to get to Europe instead of playing consistently and developing in MLS seriously hurt our national team? Players blindly making the jump to Europe and big clubs/brands instead of finding the right club/realistic opportunities to play, as opposed to my generation in 2008-2014, Bolton, Fulham, Everton, Wolves, Hanover, Schalke, etc. And now you have a ton of exciting prospects that have massively stunted their growth. Chris Richards is actually an example of a guy that's playing at that mid-level club, Crystal Palace, and you could argue he's one of the few that's getting better and getting consistent minutes. Robinson, Fulham, and then our elite player, Pulisic. If our entire pool played in MLS for the next 2 years, will we be better in 2026 than what we have now? I say yes, 100%.
Wow. Stu Holden coming in hot. And yeah, I did want to include this because we do go back and, Stu's now like an honorary member of our show. And he thinks about the State of the Union, probably more so than he thinks about anything else out there, including his family. And, we'll cop to have created a monster when it comes to Stu Holden. But I love that he's thinking about this in terms of the national team. And ultimately what his question, it comes down to that last sentence. If our entire playing pool was actually playing and playing consistently and starting in MLS, would Mauricio Pochettino have a better chance of being successful in 2026? And Stu Holden is absolutely right. And I know that the allure and the bright lights of Europe and what kids grow up being exposed to and thinking about, it's very, very hard to tell a player, you know what? You are actually better off playing consistently in the domestic league in terms of MLS, when Europe is saying, hey, come. And, Europe can be wonderful. And if your only goal is to play at Europe, again, there are flights leaving every hour on the hour from LAX to JFK. But you have to be careful that you are not dashed on the rocks, that the siren's call of Europe doesn't derail you. And from a U.S. men's national team perspective, and this gets back to what Stu was saying, I think that ultimately going into 2026, and we've talked about no sacred cows, there has to be a recognition that it doesn't matter where you play. And certainly when you're talking about MLS, you can be successful and you can give Mauricio Pochettino what he wants if you're playing for Cincinnati, or if you're playing for Juventus, or if you're playing for Columbus, or if you're playing for Lille, or, any number of these different things. But if you're not playing, it doesn't preclude you from being successful. But we are seeing a number of players right now that, to Stu Holden's point, have stunted their growth. And while they may be getting paid a lot of money, and that's certainly good, and that's a part of the equation, and they may enjoy the experience over there that they are getting, from a pure national team perspective, that's not helping us. I don't think, to Stu's point, I don't think the entire pool is going to be playing in MLS, but it's a real interesting thought type of experiment. And you get into the whole Euro snob thing, and there's plenty of people that are listening to this right now and saying that's ludicrous, that's ridiculous. How is that possibly something that Stu Holden can attach his name to? I second it when it comes to playing. I don't care where you're playing, but I do want you to be playing, all things being equal. All right? So, Mosse, you got anything on that?
No, I will revisit this topic with Stu on Wednesday's pod.
Yes, indeed, my friend. Stu Holden is coming back, and he will be hosting come Wednesday. Special guest host, because I'm going to tell you what I'll be doing here in a second, because we are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I'll give you my one for the road that will explain all, my friends. Oh, I love the van. I love the van, Mosse. You look awesome. All right, yes, is the end of our show, and at the end of each and every show, I give you my one for the road. Mosse, I will not be here to record our next show later on this week. I am heading down to Monterrey, Mexico for a FIFA event. As you know, Monterrey is one of the 3 cities in Mexico for the 2026 World Cup. And so we are doing some promotion through FIFA and through the committee down there in Monterrey. I will be playing in a rest of the world legends versus Mexico legends. And for those that are watching, you can see we have a bunch of the legends up here. And I'm in pretty good company, my friend, here. Let's see. Let's go through here. Del Piero, Xavi, Buffon, Puyol, Pirlo, Drogba, Forlan, Terry, Julio Cesar, Trezeguet, Rodriguez, Djorkaeff, Lalas. Yes, one of these kids is not like the others. And then over on the Mexican side, my good friend Carlos, Jorge Campos, Borghetti, Osvaldo, Pardo, El Matador, Luis Hernandez, Aguilar, Oribe, Luna, Layun. So the list goes on and on and on. I'm really looking forward to going down to Monterrey. I don't know if I've been down there before, but it's going to be fun to hang out with all these legends. Hopefully they'll let me in the door, play a little game, do some charity work, and obviously bring some attention to Monterrey, which is going to be one of the locations for 2026.
You do have a strong track record in these sorts of games. I heard some reports that a couple years ago in Qatar, you shined in some old-timers games. And also, many years back, before you even started working at Fox, I remember I attended a U.S.-Mexico old-timers game, and you were the best player on the field by far. So you bring it in these sorts of matches. Well,
that was before my knee replacement, and so I will be metallic when I go out there, and I hope that the likes of Pirlo will take pity on me. But I'm just trying to keep the ball, my friend. I'm showing everybody outside, all right, and I'm trying not to get in any foot races. But we're going to have a good time there, and you're going to have a good time because Stu Holden has graciously agreed to come in and hang out on Wednesday and guest host. So that'll be fun. I'll be interested to, when I'm down there, pull it up, and hopefully I don't get Wally pipped.
Very quickly, I know we're running long, but I do want to note that Aaron Schechter has graced us with her presence. I don't know if you noticed her coming into the studio just now. She's been busy. First, she went to New York to visit family, and then she was involved in this big Joel Klatt Madison show, which I heard went off very well. So kudos to everyone digital that worked on that. Apparently, it was a big success.
What do you think, Mosse? What if we brought it on the road and did like a little theater show somewhere? I know the folks over there at the Men in Blazers do it, and you mentioned Joel Klatt, and so it's a phenomenon out there. You think anybody would show up? I mean, we do a little place. We wouldn't do a big place, but it'd be interesting to do a live show in front of a live audience. Would you be okay? Would you wear makeup? We started the show talking about your makeup. Would you wear makeup in that situation?
I might have to. Yeah.
You'd be fine. You're a beautiful man. You're a beautiful man. Everybody knows that. All right, listen. Anything before we go, Mosse?
That's it.
All right, keep downloading and reviewing and subscribing and rating and doing all the different things that you do, including over there on the old, what do you call it, the YouTube machine. All right, smash that button. Smash that subscribe button. Double fisting up and down. Punch over there on Spotify. Whether you're watching, whether you're listening, we really appreciate that everybody joins us here each and every week, multiple times each and every week when it comes to the State of the Union. Have fun with Stu later on in the week. Adios, my friends. I'm going down to Monterrey. Till then, and as always, size the day.